This conference will now be recorded.
2020. Okay. Okay. I will start the Finance Committee meeting here on 15th of December at 8:32 p.m. Present are committee members Limpert, Glassburn. I do not see committee member Williamson yet. On the agenda is ordinance 2022-120, which is the temporary budget for the 2023 fiscal year. Also, in addition to the committee members, we have council members Kelly, Scarl, Heeman, and Council President Broussard, the finance director, the service director, the assistant finance director, the recreation director. Mr. Glassburn's having a little bit of audio challenges here, and unfortunately, Ms. Williamson's not here. So, Mr. Glassburn, can you please just confirm that you have audio of hearing us before I go any further through the chat?
Mr. Limpert?
Yes, Clerk Taylor.
Councilwoman Williamson will be on shortly. So she's just a little late if Mr. Glassburn isn't able to connect here.
Okay. Additional chat message here.
Should be just a moment.
Taylor, did Ms. Williamson say she was joining here? You spoke to her recently that she was joining?
Yes, she's on right now. She's just now appearing.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, also present for the meeting are committee member Williamson and council member Gilchrist. Mr. Glassburn's having some audio issues, so I guess we can start. There was a couple items that that we wanted to accomplish here, and one was just to review some of the open items. I think there were some questions. There were some questions from the Saturday and Tuesday sessions related to what was presented by the administration. So just taking a note, Ms. Taylor, I know we got something from finance related to the time clock budget item. Were there any, and we also received something from Ms. Gill around the ARPA grant money related to the United Healthcare item. Were there any other responses that we received since the meetings related to budget items that I didn't discuss right there?
Not that I know of.
Okay. And there was a couple items that were
Mr.
outlined.
Chair?
Go ahead, Mr.
Mr. Carney's waving his hand.
Oh, go ahead, Mr. Carney. Thank you.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay. In response to President's request about light poles or ones with non-existing poles for installation, if it's overhead wiring, it'll be $2,750 per pole. And then we'll have to get property permission from property owners for easement because the boxes are on in the people's backyards. And for underground installation for three lights, it'll be $15,500 for three lights. And that's plus or minus 10%. And for that, you will also need permission from homeowners for put an easement line down their side of their property. So that's like for anything new on streets that don't have poles, like per Chapel Hill. I can repeat that numbers if you want me to. I didn't get to B. Taylor because I was going back and forth with emails with CEI. I didn't get it in time. And my apologies.
No problem. So thank you, Director Carney. So you said $2,150 per pole, plus easement for
$2,750, and that's if it's going to go power. Like if we have a pole and we're just putting the light on a pole, it costs approximately $750. But if we have to put up a pole and run power to it, it's going to cost us $2,700. It's $2,750 per pole, and that's if you go overhead lighting power, like with the wires. And if you go underground power, it'll be for three poles, it'll be $15,500. And for either way, we're going to have to get property owners permission for digging down their side of their properties to put in power lines to get to the street.
Okay. I'm a little confused on when you're saying $2,750 per. So it's $2,750 just to get the pole. Then we have to add all the lighting. It's another $15,000.
Let me talk fast. So if you're going to get one overhead power lines,
yeah,
like it's $2,750 per pole per light. If we're going with underground power, no overhead.
Okay.
No overhead wires. Then it's going to be for three lights. It'll be $15,500.
Okay. And those three lights are going to be not on the same pole, right?
So like you'll have one property easement for three lights poles that way. It'll be more costly to go with underground wiring.
Right. Okay. Thank you for those estimates.
And I will get this in black and
Um,
white. I'll get this in black and white to the B. Taylor tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
And you
Mr.
can
Carney,
email it to you.
yeah, and I did you have any idea from like Bradley Road for the master plan of like what components of sidewalk would be on the parking side, or do I still need to revisit that with the engineer or you for cost?
So I don't have a cost number, but I mean, I could have it for you for the next budget meetings,
Okay.
for the permanent budget meetings.
Yeah. Okay.
And also, I was thinking of like maybe a caution light like we have over on Clegg Road. You know,
Right.
by Little Clegg,
Yeah.
putting something like that there, and if it's cheaper than the sidewalks, we
Okay.
can just have it maybe for hours, activate it when there's practice and games.
Okay.
Thank you.
That makes sense. Thank you. Any other items from the administration from the previous meetings? Okay, Mr. Glassburn, do you have audio now? Ms. Coffer, you have something, go ahead. You just muted, Ms. Coffer.
Sorry, I thought I clicked it. Someone in council had asked about if we could reduce the dispatch overtime line item based on the dispatch supervisor being an additional staff person. And I spoke with the safety director and the police chief, and also looked at the line item and what they've been spending on it. And it's at 80,000 this year, and they reduced it to 50 next year, so they already did anticipate it going down somewhat. But we have one, possibly three. We for sure have one, possibly three people that are retiring. One at the end of this year, so they're going to still be incurring overtime while they're in the hiring process and stuff. So I would not recommend reducing it anymore. And they agreed with that, concurred.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I saw Mr. Kelly, thanks. Any other feedback from the questions that were outstanding on previous line items? Okay, and then we had some certain requests from council, I think, that we were looking to evaluate. Unless Mr. Glassburn, if you get audio, please chime in. Otherwise, what I had raised my item on the Barton Bradley, and we just were informed on the cost of lighting, so that would be a discussion of what that appetite is. And then Mr. Kelly, you say you had something that you wanted to highlight.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to see if we could get a second e-bike, electric bike for the police department for the amount of time that we have issues around that mall area, and also for policing throughout the developments. A second e-bike would be good for their patrol and to be able to sneak up on anything that's going on in the mall parking lot where they'll see a car coming from a long distance away. Thank you.
Okay. Was there any other items from council? Mr. Glassburn, if you could try that again. Yeah. And Mr. Glassburn, unfortunately, we can't hear you. You're coming in just quickly garbled, and then we're losing you.
Mr. Chair,
Okay. Yes, go ahead.
he is calling in on the phone, but he can hear us, but we just can't hear him.
Okay. Well, as I said, if he can chat, then we can at least I can relay that. Otherwise, I don't know what else I can really do at this point.
Yeah, he was able to chat earlier, but now since he's calling in, I'm not sure if he's online right now.
Okay.
Is it possible for him to call one of us and we can put him on speakerphone rather than trying?
Yeah, I asked him that earlier, and he was trying to call in then.
Or if he called Dwayne or one of us and we can just put him on.
That's what I said.
Okay. I hot off the press. I can now review the document of potential items. So one item that had come up from the ARPA discussions was around the council chambers, and I believe after some assessment and B, I don't know if you have any insights into this, but the number that Mr. Glassburn's proposing is $50,000 around that. Is that something that we had from assessment, or is that kind of an estimate based on what the original proposal was?
I'm sorry, are you speaking with me, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, I just wasn't sure if you had any other insights on that, because I know it had been discussed a little bit between you and the administration, some background. So if not, that's fine. But I think the proposal here was like a bucket of 50,000. So if you didn't have any additional insights in that, then
I did not.
I would just say, okay. So I would say that's just an assumption from the finance chair's perspective of what seemed reasonable versus what the ARPA proposal was. So that's one line item. The next one was around Clegg Park and the playground. I guess his proposal was around 50,000 for that. Do we have any other, Mr. Pinchek? Do we have any idea of what some of the previous playground upgrades cost? I know we did something recently at the park of replacing a playground in recent years. Do we know how much that costs typically?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I can get that information to you and get back to you tomorrow.
Okay.
I do know $50,000 is not going to get you a whole lot, though. Just so you're aware. I'll look into it for you.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Ms. Heeman.
thank you. Just that little bit of playground equipment that we did at the park, kind of behind the senior center where that little small children's playground had fallen apart was minimum 10,000. And I think that Commissioner Drewski really sort of whittled it down. It started at, I think, about 30. So if that's helpful to anything, I think that is what we paid, was about 10 for that little tiny thing that we put in, and it's for toddlers, really. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Heeman. And then the next item was around I might need to clarify this reduction in energy and utility costs. Hold on. Okay, got it. Okay. I think there was a proposal potentially to increase that cost. So anyway, we have a playground item somewhere between 50 or broader that was proposed. The e-bike, which Mr. Kelly proposed. The fire truck, I think we've talked about that, right? The EMS fire truck, and that the administration will hold off on that until they get assessment. Is that right, Ms. Kopfer? To hold off
Yes,
on
Mr.
that.
Chair. We had discussed, the mayor had mentioned at the last meeting that we're going to be getting pricing, and the committee is going to be meeting and getting the specs, and we'll have a better idea of what the pricing is, and we'll bring it back early next year
Okay.
with a funding source.
Okay. And then, hey, Mr. Glassburn, while we're working on this, if you can chime in on this note you'd made about the 200,000 ARPA shift finance to ARPA. I'm not really clear what that entails, or what some more detail on that to be able to communicate that. And then I think the last topic we talked about, which was in the meeting that we haven't heard back, Mr. Pinchuk, I don't know if you have any more commentary from our meeting Saturday, but just around long-term priorities of the pool. Is that something that you have any insights in, or is that something that we'd have to talk about between now and the permanent budget as far as that?
Thank you, Councilman. So in 2015 and 2016, there was a study that was sent out for for $46,000 the city had spent on the total master plan that included the parks as well as the recreation center. As you can see in the 2023 budget, we put $30,000 in there to do a study just for the pools and possibly refresh the Benke study from the master plan at the North Olmsted Community Park. So as I stated in the budget meetings on Saturday, that is the intention, that we do some research and contact the architectural firm to give us some guidance as what we can do to the most cost-effective way that we can get our pools, our competitive pool up and functioning, whether that's replacing it, whether that's building a new one, looking at the different options that we have in front of us. So the money has been put in there to do that study.
Okay, so we have that in our reserve bucket for the assessment.
Correct.
Okay. Any questions from council related to that pool item? Okay. All right. So I guess we had a couple items here, and if I'm totaling this up right, we're looking at 30, a pretty significant number, $300,000 of potential line items here.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, go ahead, Ms. Copper.
could you go over that line? Like, where are you assessing those dollars?
Oh, I got it. Sorry, I made a one clerical error in my addition because there's two line items here. I have 280,000, and so what I'm seeing from that is the council chambers, which is 50,000. Yeah, 50. Yeah.
Okay.
Clegg Park, which I think the estimate here is 50,000. So again, I think that's a conversation of what's the right number for what that is. And I think all of these, let me just preface this. I'm going through these. The purpose of this call is really for us as a council to come together on which of these additions we feel are priority, and then what options we are for funding. We potentially have to remove something, or these would be things that we would like the administration to consider for the permanent budget, assuming the reserves are larger, right? Or we have a higher revenue, or there's room in the budget. So Clegg Park, 50,000. Police e-bike is, I think the current one's 4,000, right, Ms. Kopfer? The one that's in the budget.
Yes. 4,000.
The markings for Barton Bradley, I think we threw an estimate here of like 75,000, but that may be high.
Does
Mr.
that
Carney. I
include
mean,
like sidewalks?
well, I think this is kind of the assessment that would be maybe like I mean, the caution lights, I think in the past, when we looked at that, that was about 75,000. Again, I'm not prescribing a solution here. I'm prescribing the issue because I'm looking for service and engineering to do what makes the most sense from a safety perspective. But, Mr. Carney, I think when we looked at the Click Road thing, wasn't that lower level caution light like 75,000?
Yes.
So that kind of has some room, and then based on whatever the right solution is there to improve the safety for people crossing there, we'd go there. So I don't know if I would assume that would potentially be smaller if we're talking paving versus a caution light.
Mr. Lippert?
Go ahead.
I was also in Lakewood and Westlake. They have speed tables, which the safety director has talked about before. Maybe throwing a speed table there and put a sign up, 100 feet before each way. Because if you hit the speed table, you're gonna feel it. I mean, that might be a deterrent. I know it would be a deterrent. Just things to talk
Yeah,
about.
I think that would be a question. I think that'd be a question if can we do that on the county road?
I think that could easily. I could find that out tomorrow morning.
Okay, yeah, if we can. I mean, as I said, I'm not prescribing the solution. I'm identifying the symptom that's been part of the master plan, and it's about time that we do something about it. Okay, but that's Mr. Carney. You're saying that's a cheaper solution potentially?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
Councilman Limpert, if I could just add something there.
Yes.
Thank you. I am going to be working with the safety forces to put together a comprehensive traffic safety plan for next year with a special focus on speed management. And I'd love to be able to work with the data and work with residents if we're going to go ahead with something like a speed table or speed cushions, to use that information to identify the best places to make those installments because they are permanent. So I'd like to be able to look at it from a comprehensive lens as we move forward next year.
Mr. Lippert?
Yes.
I totally agree with the safety director. Her and the police department have a better idea of how to handle this than I do. I'm just throwing out ideas. I definitely, would recommend going by with whatever the safety director says.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And as I said, I mean, there's subject matter expertise here on how to best mitigate that safety, and I'm totally open to that in a cost-effective way. So from what I'm proposing, is there any concern of that dollar amount not being appropriate to what we're talking about here? It doesn't sound
Mr.
out
Chairman,
of the. Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Carney.
Were you talking to? Are you still talking to me? I'm not sure.
Yeah, either you, Director Schofield, whichever you think from the 75,000. That's far higher than what we're talking about from the potential solutions, or if that's not even going to meet the mark, I guess.
Councilman Limpert, I can't give you an estimate on that.
Okay.
I'm happy to
Okay.
look into it more.
Okay, so I mean, I think that would be one item that we might need to do a little bit additional. Okay, and then the other, so that was Ms. Kopfer. That was so we said 50,000 from the council chambers ARPA, and I think our original proposal was 250, right? So I guess the question is, is that 200,000 available to address some of these other capital items?
Mr. Chair, Where did
Yeah.
you say the 200,000 was coming from, revenue-wise? Um,
So this was, I think this is the bucket related, so that in the original ARPA proposal by the
oh,
administration,
okay.
there
I'm
was a,
sorry.
there was a 250 line item for council chamber updates, right?
I'm not sure if it was 200 and 250. Maybe Mr. Massarolo might know the amount. Because that's still in the ARPA fund. We would just have to allocate it toward council chambers as it was this year in the budget already and not
And then,
spent.
yeah, and then the question is that the amount that's not part of that reduced amount, my understanding was that the ARPA could be used for capital uses, right? And we were thinking one-time uses, correct?
Yes. Mr. Chair, does or Special Assistant to the Mayor, Massarolo, do you have the exact amount? I don't recall what ARPA funds were available for that.
I believe the only amount of ARPA funds that were not allocated in those meetings was $216,000. I can double check that, but that
Okay.
was what the original allocation was for the chambers, and I believe that was the only thing that wasn't allocated.
I think you're right now that you say that amount. So there was 216,000 that has remained unallocated for council's solutions to council chambers, sound system and what have you. So we would just have to appropriate that.
The 50K and then the other 160K could potentially be appropriated for some of these other line items.
It could be, yes, actually, as I'm looking through them, if that's what council's pleasure is.
Okay, so let's now, is there any other items that I'm missing here or questions on what I currently brought up from the list?
I do. Mr. Chair, I do have.
Councilwoman Heeman
Yeah, go ahead, Ms.
is
Heeman.
waving.
Thank you. Director Kopfer, can you refresh us, please, as to the, with the ARPA funds and, once they're encumbered, can they be unencumbered? There was a whole discussion on that, and I now would like a refresher if you don't mind. That
They were allocated, Mr. Chair, if I may, they were allocated based on resolutions for purposes that were agreed upon. And the reason why that 216 was because council didn't want to commit that amount to that. So those funds in that could be reallocated by council if they are not going to use it for that purpose.
Mr. Chair, if I may follow up. My question though is, so let's say we allocate this 50,000 to the chambers and, another 50 to the playground or whatever we're doing, right? If those costs come in less, how is that ARPA money reallocated to something else? Is that something that we can do?
Yes, we can do that, absolutely, because the
All right.
goal of it is to spend all the money by the end of 12/24, or at least, appropriate it and have
Yeah.
contracts under and commitments made by then, so.
Okay, so it's contracts. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, any other items? Miss Williamson, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know I wasn't at the meeting the other night, and I was aware that Mr. Glassburn did bring up my concerns about the Brook Park Road, those island sections. Is there any plan to address those with this year's budget, or is this something that we're going to look forward to in the future?
Yeah, Ms. Williamson, Mr. Carney can kind of chime in. We did bring it up, and as part of the discussion, I think there was a question of whether that could be addressed through painting, markings, or curbs. And I don't think we had like a specific answer of what we would want to do there. Mr. Carney, I don't know if there was any other kind of dollar amount that you thought about or since the conversation was brought up Tuesday.
I think things like that, like even like we could do things, but I think we're best off waiting for the new engineer to come on board and give us the right. So we're not throwing, like say at the soccer field, throwing $50,000 or something, and then next year we changing direction how we're going to solve the problem between the engineer and safety forces. And as far as Angela, Miss Williams, Councilwoman Williamson, as far as Brook Park goes, that we have to look at eyes on that with the engineer also.
And that's fine, Director, as long as we could make that one of our priorities, because the lighting there has been an issue for a number of years. But I think now with hearing about more people going in the wrong direction in that road, it's kind of frightening. So if we could just make that one of the priorities when he comes in, or he or she, I would really appreciate that. So thank you.
Well,
Thanks for
I wrote it. I wrote it down Tuesday night. It's on the list, and I appreciate it. No problem.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead, Ms. Heeman.
Thank you. If I may, to Director Carney, on behalf of Councilwoman Williamson, on Brook Park Road, a lot of the lighting is actually somewhat yellow, not white. So it's not like a new LED, and I don't know if it's the cover over the light or if it's the bulb itself, and whether or not the county can help us with that. Mr. Carney, could you look into just that? Perhaps there's a light bulb swap or a face cover swap that could make it better and help us in the meantime.
Sure. Just so you know that, Mr. Chairman, so Councilwoman Heeman, that anytime they replace a light bulb now, they're all LED. So they're all the same now. They're not replacing any bulbs with the old kind of old-fashioned light bulbs. So all new bulbs are LED. Now, whether those are old or new over there, I have no idea.
Thank you, Mr. Carney.
Thank you.
Okay, so Ms. Williamson, did that address your question and comment? Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Ms. Kuffer.
About the Clegg Park playground, weren't we talking with this, and I haven't been to Spruce or Forest, were there not playground equipment there that was going to be transferred somewhere?
Mr. Carney?
Well, as far as I know, the school board was going to keep all the playground equipment. Mr. Pinchuk might have something else. That's what I heard from the school board.
Mr. Carney, I can.
Okay.
Mrs. Koffer, I can elaborate on that as well. There was an option that from the schools that if we would like a few pieces that we could move that. We've looked into with Jamie Snyder and Associates to get a certified playground company to actually do that, and it was pretty pricey at that time for the playground equipment that was available.
Okay, never mind.
Ms. Williamson, go ahead.
Is our service department not able to do that?
I'll let Mr. Pinchuk that. We could do it, but as safety goes. Go on, Tim. Sorry.
No, it's okay, Kevin. When you're removing playground equipment that was installed by certified contractors, it's always best to have a certified contractor remove it to reinstall it as well. So just for warranty and safety reasons. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for the
good question. No, great question.
Well, I know Director Carney's department can do everything, so.
They can. You're right.
So Tim, Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Mr.
Weren't they handpicking the good equipment though? Isn't that what Mike said?
Yeah. Yes, they were. Yep.
They were saving, they were keeping all the good stuff for themselves, and I don't blame them, but that was their goals. Thank you.
Okay. So now that I've got that out, I guess from a council perspective, is there any concerns about any of these line items or feelings that we shouldn't propose the items that were listed, or to the level of funding that are outlined here? Ms. Heeman, go ahead.
Thank you. So if you're adding things, what are you taking away? I guess is, where's, or is it all coming out of this
Yeah,
260,
yeah. So
50,
so I think
50 and 50? Is that what you're suggesting?
well, so what it sounds like, and this is what the proposal is, right? I mean, I think Mr. Glassburn was thinking this, and we were kind of looking at it from, there was a line item that was related to council chambers, right? And while we understand that, while it's council chambers, it impacts other parts of city usage. The thought was, well, what are we going to do to pay for it without taking a big chunk away from other parts of the administration's temporary budget? Based on what the finance director or Mr. Massarello outlined, the line item was approximately 216,000. So reducing the council chamber updates to 50,000, which, I think there's going to have to be a conversation there too, of we don't have an estimate yet of what that scope would be, but the thought would be, what can we do for 50,000 that would be meaningful upgrade? And we would kind of hold it to a budget as opposed to the full scope of requirements. I think talking with some other council members, I think there was a kind of a few core requirements, and then other things were nice to haves. So I think the thought process of how do you pay for it was, can that come out of that ARPA line item for at least 160K of what looks like, and Ms. Heeman, I'm glad you brought that up, because doing the math, that leaves 50, 54, 129, 200. It still leaves about $70,000 of items that we would still need to pay for. And I think one of the assumptions was that we could potentially, there would be savings through the overtime line item, or I think the energy savings, Ms. Kopfer, you noted at the rec center. Was that money already appropriated somewhere else?
No, it was not, Mr. Chair. But it is in the amendment already, so don't put it in again. It's already in what was sent to you guys this afternoon. The reducing the electricity line item by 50,000.
So was that added to the reserve item, the reserve line, or?
Correct, yeah, yes, it's in the unfunded balance.
Okay. So
At
that
this
would
time.
still leave about $20,000 of what gets removed, Ms. Heeman, I think, if my math's right. And that would be then for us, the other line item to that is, we were concerned about the reserves being so low, and we're going to continue to dig into that instead of letting them grow up, or instead of adding some money back. So that's kind of the discussion points, Ms. Heeman, for whether these are all the value of drawing down some reserves and reducing the council chambers project, or what I've seen so far for proposals. Ms. Kopfer, go ahead.
So if you're, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to make sure we have the math right. So you're saying out of the 216 ARPA monies, we're going to reserve 50,000 for the project for improvements to council chambers.
Yes. That's what the proposal is, yeah.
And then you want to do 75,000 for Barton Bradley sidewalks?
Safety measures, yeah.
And then 50,000 for the playground?
That's what I'm seeing, yes. Yeah.
And then 4 for a second e-bike. And
Yep,
that
and
would
then,
leave,
well, and then
okay,
what I've seen as a line item here, and I think that's open for discussion too, now that we have sort of what the costs are for the different options. But, an item that was thrown out here off of Tuesday's meeting was, 100,000 for streetlights, which what do we have currently allocated there? Because we carried
just
some over from
20
last year.
20,000, Mr. Chair, but that was more assuming it was just like individual lights on different
Mhm.
streets to kind of fill in.
Right. Well, and I think the administration proposed, and at least while I was there listening, um, was a prudent idea is to just make sure that we have an assessment on where those lights are needed and to figure out that plan of where those go and whether that whether that is 750 is what, like 110 lights, or we might need to mix it up here with some of the ones that already have that would need to get a pole added. um, I think that's up for discussion as part of um, the legislation as far as how those would be allocated. Um, but I get, I apologize for the cough. But if we already have 20,000, and if we made it 100,000, then that would only be adding 80,000 to the budget, which would bring us pretty close to what we were talking about here, right? If we had 80,000 for streetlights in addition to what was already on the legislation, um, the Barton Bradley would make it 155. The police bike would be 159. The Clegg Park would be 209, and the council chambers would be part of that, which would leave 160, plus the 50 reserves would theoretically cover it. And then it's just a conversation of, is that amenable to council to do that swap? So it looks like we have the money, Carrie, if we did 100K total in street lighting versus 80, or versus 80 plus the 20.
I didn't say 80, I said 20,000. Oh, 80
No,
plus the 20. Okay.
yeah, 80
Sorry.
plus the
Okay.
20. Yeah.
Um, so you want to spend, and this is out of the ARPA funding, the 80, is that what you're looking at?
Well, what I'm looking at, I guess what I'm seeing from the buckets, and these again, this is Mr. Glassburn's proposal here of where to fund it, because I think Ms. Heeman brings up a great point. Whenever we add stuff, how are we going to fund it, right?
Sure, right, absolutely.
And so the theory is that council had already discussed the ARPA money, and a majority, if not all, agreed that was not where we wanted to go with that much towards the council chamber upgrade. So that was still in reserves. So the question is 50 too much to scale back, or but let me just lay out this proposal, and then we can discuss about whether any of these line items like are too far scaled back, or there's too much there and we should look at that reserve line item. But that's 160K based on that proposal, and then with the rec energy savings, that comes out to 210. And if the street lights were at 100K total, that'd be adding 80K for that. Bradley Road would be 75, so that's 155. So that essentially leaves 5,000, and the bike, right, the e-bike, that basically covers the ARPA funding, and then the recreation playground would be 50, which basically is the energy savings, and it's a wash if we were to fund it that way.
Okay, I was going to suggest the 50 for the playground would come from the rec center.
Yes, yeah. After I said that, I totally agree with that, but
Yeah.
I was working my way up the list here.
But I guess here's the question I have for council.
Yes.
I mean, a lot of these numbers are swags that we don't really know if 75,000 is going to help Barton Bradley or what have you. We don't really know if 50,000 is enough for council chambers. Mr. Pinchuk has already said that 50,000 is not much of a playground for Clegg Park.
Right.
And I mean, the lighting, I think we have pretty good numbers on that cost. So I just, I mean, are these things that you want to put in the temporary budget? All of these items and allocate those funds, or do you want to, I mean, maybe we know the lighting for sure, and we can put that in the temporary budget because we have a pretty good idea how much that costs, even though we don't know where we're doing it. And then wait
Yeah.
for permanent. I just feel like, especially if we're kind of in between engineers, like we have no idea about Brook Park. That was the
Yeah.
other things. I mean,
Eh,
it's council's pleasure. You control the purse strings,
Yeah,
but I'm
Ms.
just
Copper, I
trying to
mean,
get
I
on
think
getting
I
her
made
done.
my thoughts. Yeah, thank you, Ms. Copper. I think I made my notes, in the last meeting that, I mean, I'm comfortable with having hard enough, for the temporary budget. But these would be things that I think we needed to determine. And, given where we're talking about the line items, I think we do have some flexibility here, right? Because the ARPA money doesn't need to be fully committed from that perspective, right? We can
Correct.
adjust that line item, correct?
It's not going to go elsewhere
Right.
unless you say it will.
So, Ms. Williamson, I turn to committee here, and Mr. Glassburn, if you're on, feel chime in. But do you have any concerns of having these as communicated items that we would like to see in the permanent budget? With the exception, I think the street lighting, from what Ms. Copper says, can be tied in there and has a hard number. That we would have these available for the, we wouldn't need to amend it for the temporary budget here. We could continue to work to get a little bit better, less of a swag, right, and more of an accurate dollar item there for the permanent budget.
I agree.
Okay. Any concerns or questions from council then on that? Is that approach? Does anyone have concerns on that? Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I would even argue, I mean, we have the money for those lights if we want to, but I mean, maybe wait till the engineer comes in to help us decide where to best spend those resources. And maybe, I mean, I don't know if someone's studying the street lights to know where we need new, like, streets that need lights or not. I thought that they were talking about it possibly being part of the street rating system that they were looking at.
Yeah, I believe Mayor Jones mentioned it that way. When they had discussed that software, I had raised that question of whether it could be used for that as well. And at the time, Mr. Upton wasn't sure, but it was certainly amenable to that. I personally am adamant that we shouldn't put up streetlights to whoever just says they want a streetlight, and there needs to be a plan. I don't know how the rest of the council feels, but I think the important part is getting the money allocated into the budget so we can move forward with that and know that there's money there that we can make a plan around, and from there do sort of a couple, whatever that makes the most sense, that would provide the most efficiency, right? Is it a phased approach where you get all of the ones that have poles already in the areas of need, and then we look at bigger projects, or do you do a mix? That's things that I think we're all open to, the experts kind of laying out a proposal there.
And Mr. Chair, you're saying that 80,000, the 20 is coming out of the general fund street lighting line item, and the 80 is coming out of your allocation of ARPA?
So looking at this is where we may have a little bit of math to do, Director. But we have 80,000 for streetlights, right? So if I were to put that in ARPA, that's 80. Then the Clegg Park you recommended would be a good place for ARPA, so that's 130. And then that's where it gets into how do we want to do this, because there's 75 right now. So obviously that would need to be refined. But for the Bradley soccer field area and the e-bike, right, that brings up to the other
Yeah.
80,000. So that's just kind of a question of how does that work? And is there a way to make that work between that and, the general, the 50,000 went back into the general fund for the rec energy.
The 50,000 is in the recreation fund.
It's in the
So,
recreation fund? Okay.
right, it's their energy line item.
Well then, so the
So that's
I'm
where the
looking at the
playground could
list
come
here
out
and
of.
that's the playground. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Well, why don't we, do you have a list of the things
I
that you're
do.
reading off
I,
of?
I was,
Because
yeah, I was,
the administration, we weren't provided it, so I'm just trying to make sure we're on the same page.
yeah, in all fairness, I wasn't provided until just now either. So,
Yeah.
so there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 line items, right? There's the
Mhm.
council or there's 4 line items, right? Because I don't really want to add the council chamber as a line item. That's sort of a
Okay.
reduction, right? That's the
No,
other
sorry,
side of
I'm
the
talking to
ledger.
my dog. I'm not saying no to you.
Oh, okay. So that's the other side of ledger. So it's the recreation for Clegg Park. There's the police e-bike. There's the markings. There's Bradley Road, and there's street lights. So that's the 4 items. You with me, Miss? Okay, I thought you froze for a second.
I'm sorry, I was looking at the hotel motel fund to see what the projected um increase or what's left over there, and it's not much projection. But we can definitely take the Clegg Park out of of recreation. The e-bike, I would prefer to wait until the permanent, because I will have final numbers and we'll be able to massage that into either the general fund or the hotel motel fund. That's not a problem. We don't need to take that out of ARPA. The 80,000 would be out of ARPA, and the 75,000 for Barton Bradley sidewalks, which we're just putting a number there. We don't really know
Yeah,
if that.
I think I am perfectly comfortable. I'm perfectly comfortable that holding to the permanent budget and finding a
Okay.
place for it that makes sense, and which I would assume would be there would be a place for it, right?
Yes.
So,
And so,
okay.
Mr. Chair, I guess then we just need to know if it's okay, if council agrees that we can wait to purchase the second e-bike or put it in the budget when it's the final budget in early next year.
Yeah, and I think Miss Williamson and I both were comfortable with working that into the January conversations and legislation.
Okay, so Mr. Chair, then we need a motion to accept all the amendments that were the technical corrections that were sent to you this evening, as well as adding $80,000 of ARPA funding out of the council allocation for street lighting, to be determined where, and
Clegg Road.
$50,000 out of the recreation fund for monies toward the Clegg Park playground equipment.
Yeah.
And the rest
Now,
will wait until
yeah.
the
Can I just? Oh, the rest will be for permanent budget. Yeah.
correct.
Can I just get clarification on the Clegg Road Is this to replace what's currently there, or is this some addition? Do we know? Mr. Pinchek, have you talked to Mr. Glassburn? Has anybody talked to him? Or if you're
This
still
is,
listening, chat.
to my knowledge, this is just additional playground equipment.
Okay. 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 So any other questions from council or committee? All right, then at this time, I'd like to make a motion to recommend ordinance 2022-120 with the following amendments. The technical corrections that were sent this evening by the finance department based on the conversations from Saturdays and Tuesday meetings, with an addition of the reallocation of the council portion or the council chamber portion of ARPA funding for 80,000 in street lighting, and the adjustment of $50,000 from the recreation department towards Clay Park playground equipment. And did I miss anything there, Ms. Copper?
No, Mr. Chair.
And ask for a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Glassburn, if you could chat an aye or nay, please do so. Otherwise, we'll do it 2-0.
He says aye.
Did you get, is that from, did he text it or?
He chatted it, yeah.
He
He
chatted
chatted it.
He did chat. Okay. Oh, somehow I'm in like an individual instead of everyone. Okay. Awesome. Okay. So that motion passes by a vote to 3-0. And I'll conclude the finance meeting after thanking everybody for your patience and excellent presentations over the course of the last 3 meetings at 9:35 p.m. Thank you to the administration.
Night.
Good night.
Night.